Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage NASCIO President James Collins.
Y'all hear that? Who knows what it is? Shout it out. Nobody? I can't hear you. You know what? Irvin, you my man. The car wash, people. We'll give everybody a chance to get in right quick. All right, I guess we better get to work. Let's get to work. Cut it out, Irvin. We got to get to work. All right, guys, come on. Let's get to work. So we got a great panel coming up for you. I hope that, one of the points that I didn't mention from Mr. Leiden's presentation is what was clear to me is when he gave the data on millennials and their expectations and experience with technology, and when you juxtapose that to how we're delivering services today, we all have to work together to change that and evolve that, because I do believe at some point in the future there will be a revolt if we're not genuinely delivering digital government in an intuitive, elegant, and beautiful way. So that was a couple other thoughts that I took away from that presentation. So speaking of the future, each year NASCIO conducts a survey of state CIOs in partnership with Grant Thornton and CompTIA, and we appreciate that partnership. The survey explores the priorities and perspectives and issues, trends reported by state CIOs. And I wanted to say, just as a CIO that meets a lot with vendor partners, I really appreciate it when they take into consideration the priorities that we've laid out and organize their presentations, customize them to those. I really appreciate that, and I think some of my colleagues would agree with that. Results inform the work of NASCIO. They provide direction and support for the states and can be used by the marketplace to better understand the needs of state government. So to provide additional context on the survey and the partnership, please welcome Jordan Crawl, Director of Public Sector for CompTIA, to the stage.
Good morning, everyone. Well, except to the NFL and their referees. Sorry, as a Lions fan, I had to throw that out there today. I clearly am not happy with the results of last night. No, in all seriousness, I am honored to be here today on behalf of CompTIA and our SLED Council to help introduce this year's State CIO Survey and panel. For those of you that may not be familiar with CompTIA, we are a leading voice and advocate for the $5 trillion global IT ecosystem. Our public sector work promotes policies and best practices that positively impact the ability of the IT industry to develop, manufacture, and sell solutions in the government marketplace. We are proud to partner yet again with NASCIO and Grant Thornton on the survey, which is now in its 10th year. I know that's not quite the same as 50, which we're celebrating right now for NASCIO, but we're getting there. Thanks to NASCIO's ongoing commitment to this endeavor, we now have a record of how state technology priorities and the role of the CIO have evolved. While I can say confidently that many things have changed from a technology perspective since the first survey was released, it seems unfortunately that IT procurement issues have remained a constant. The results of the State CIO survey provide a roadmap of how states can better leverage technology solutions and emerging trends, while also providing vendor partners the opportunity to better understand and respond to the key barriers CIOs face in meeting the needs of their customers and constituents. This year's survey, The Responsive State CIO Connecting to the Customer, explores how state IT leaders are targeting their responses to customer needs while managing their evolving role and responsibilities. I'm proud to say this survey features responses from 49 state CIOs and territory CIOs, as well as providing insight on a wide range of topics, including digital government, cybersecurity, state and local collaboration, and workforce, just to name a few. With that, today's panel will further highlight and discuss trends and key takeaways from the survey in the world of the state CIO. I am honored to introduce our panelists, which include as first moderator, Doug Robinson, the Executive Director of NASCIO, Graham Finley, Principal at Grant Thornton, John Quinn, the CIO of Vermont, and Ed Toner, the CIO of Nebraska. Thank you, everyone.
Morning, NASCIO. Welcome to Family Feud Part 2. This will not be as contentious. We are going to keep score, and so we'll see who the winning state is when we get done. As you've heard, we have an expert panel up here. I'm joined by my colleague and friend and co-author, Graham Finley from Grant Thornton. We've been doing this for 10 years, so we have a lot of good insights. We have yet to perfect how to get this done in a timely fashion, but we always are here on time, and we have a printed copy. Those are available outside the room if you haven't picked one up already. Also, we have John Quinn, CIO, great state of Vermont, and Ed Toner, CIO, great state of Nebraska. They've joined us today to get some more of these insights. I need that clicker right there, otherwise we're not going to have any insights. So let's kind of kick it off. You've already heard from Jordan this morning about the methodology and the approach. Here are the 10-year run with the topics, and we're going to weave the theme into today's topic throughout our presentation and talk about that a little bit more. We were very fortunate again to have 49 state CIO and territorial responses, remarkable response rate in the world of surveys, and so that's very interesting. And additionally, we had pre-survey interviews at our mid-year conference and had over 20 state CIOs provide us with perspectives, which always inform us and let us kind of be agile and iterative about the question development. We expand question sets, we expand topics, we drop things off and come up with the topics that we're going to talk about today. So that's very important. What we're going to talk about are 5 major topics, and 3 of those are new to the survey, so that's important. So see those highlighted with an asterisk about the 5 topics out of the 12. You heard Jordan mention some of the topics. Some of these are perennial topics. We have longitudinal data. Actually, we have some going back 10 years since the inception of the survey, and you see this wave. What's very interesting, of course, from each survey is we have new voices added in this case, 19 new CIOs added into the voice of the survey from 2018. So that's different perspectives and different optics of what they're seeing. So that's very, very important. So we're going to jump in. We've got time this morning to kind of cover these topics in a little more depth. We've highlighted the ones we're going to talk about. Again, these are some new topics that we haven't covered before, so we have some very interesting data and perspectives about that. So let's start off with a topic that we've been following kind of with leading indicators for a number of years, and that's around CIO business models. And again, as we look at what we've already heard throughout the conference of this change and evolution from CIO owner-operator model to CIO as broker and what that means, we've been asking this set of questions again for many, many years. And so I'm going to turn it over to Graham for the national perspective on his thoughts on where we're seeing these movements and changes, and I think this will enlighten our perspective on that. Graham.
Yeah, well, thanks, Doug. And as you said, we've been asking this question almost every year for the past number of years, and I think we've seen a continued evolution in the data with a continued expansion in the use of IT shared services and a reduction in or downsizing in the amount of state-owned and operated data centers. And we saw that again this year. It's pretty consistent. A couple of data points that I do think were interesting were a really significant uptick in the number of states that were looking at as-a-service models and an expansion to be almost sort of uniformly every state almost was planning to do that, and it was a significant change from last year. Then the other thing I thought was interesting is I think we may have finally reached the point where the state IT staff numbers are stabilizing, or either the reductions are stopping, and in some cases there's actually somewhat of an expansion in staff, which I think is something we hadn't seen over the last several years.
So when you look at this data, John, from your perspective, we've seen, as Graham mentioned, an uptick in state IT, and that's something we hadn't seen. Now we have almost a little quarter of our states, or state CIOs are saying that. Are you expanding your IT staff?
We are not expanding, but we're keeping the number flat, and that was part of our commitment as The governor created the Agency of Digital Services in 2017. We reorganized, we consolidated all of IT into one agency. So there's one IT agency for the executive branch. We've been able to leverage people across different agencies, IT people that were embedded, and use them to keep our number flat and prioritize where we need people and where we don't. We are looking more and more at software as a service because it makes sense for us. We're not good at maintaining our stuff from a cost perspective, as well as just being able to keep the skill sets in-house long term. So that model works for us, and I think I'm interested in hearing from Ed on what they're doing.
Okay. Well, yeah, Ed's been on the hybrid consolidation ninja model here, so maybe you can talk about the work you're doing in Nebraska.
Yeah, a couple years ago we finished consolidation, and we actually expect our, as far as our staffing model, after consolidation we had more than a 20% reduction in staff. Our goal was to first just do cabinet agencies, and we ended up actually having more than 60 agencies join us. We also have 84 of 93 counties. We have the city of Lincoln. We work cooperatively with the city of Omaha. And we share a data center, so we barter between the data center in Omaha, Nebraska and our data center in Lincoln. It's really great cost savings for both of us, and so we've really become the state cloud. We probably get at least one additional county or city that comes on board every month. We post all of our rates. It's now starting, I think, to pick up because of the fact that there are concerns in the cities about security, and we tell them the best way is just come on in. And so as really the economics work out for them, they do. We have a cloud committee. So if you're going to buy any type of technology in the state, everything has to come through our office. And we evaluate all the SaaS offerings. Of course, infrastructure, we take care of that. We are their cloud for that. Platform, we're their cloud for that. But if there's a SaaS program, we evaluate it and we make sure that it doesn't replicate anything we already have. And we also put their cost against ours to see, is it something that we can do cheaper? And so that committee meets regularly and, really keeps us from duplicating services, and also keeps those shadow IT out of the state.
Ed brings up a good dimension of state and local collaboration, so we're going to actually talk about that in more detail when we get to the end of our presentation today. Let's look at, as we know over time, not surprisingly, resistance to change around these initiatives, and part of those revolve around the people and money. So we ask the CIOs, and looking at these movement to CIO as broker, what are those top obstacles, perspectives, Graham, on what we saw from the data in our conversations?
Yeah, when you hit it, people and money. It's interesting that the top two responses, the second was the current funding or cost recovery model, which I think it was about a third of people the last time we asked this question. Now it's more than half, or pretty much exactly half. And then the most significant challenge, which I think is actually an interesting segue onto the next slide, is redefining traditional roles and responsibilities and the skill set challenges with moving into a different business model.
Yeah. So John, you talked about redefining, having the new agency. When you look at some of the responses here, and you may not specifically recall exactly what you said in terms of ranking there, but was procurement a barrier to this new business model? You obviously talked about move it to SaaS. Has that been a challenge for that on the procurement side?
Yeah, it's been a challenge. We're working through it, and I think our procurement staff and state government is evolving and understanding that they need to change. And I think, every time we enter into a new contract, it gets better. So, I'm optimistic that we can get there. State procurement is slow overall, but, for us, redefining the roles and responsibilities as we move to that model has been challenging.
So Ed, I know you have a state and an organization that is heavily invested in business process redesign, lean,
Yes.
You've got lots of white and green and black belts running around. So you look at this in terms of those traditional roles. Are they moving into that? You see more efforts around managing contracts and less around boxes and wires? What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, they're doing a better job. The lean program has really taken off. This is something our governor brought with him from the private industry. I'm actually a certified Six Sigma black belt. I got that back in my day. Being an industrial engineer, it was a good fit. And so we really look at everything that has slowed us down, and purchasing is certainly one of those things. I think the more I'm at the state and the more I learn how to get through the process a little bit easier. I think we all know that. And so we take the easiest route, but the Lean Six Sigma group, they are looking at that. They're trying to modify it where possible. Of course, some of the times our biggest problem is our legislative rules. You know, they kind of prohibit some of this. But yeah, I certainly tried to get the best deal I can and get through the process as quickly as possible. Sometimes it gets me in the paper, but that's okay.
No front page news. Let me stay with that because you just talked about your workforce. Let's dig in a little bit deeper to the 57% that said that. We're asking, so in that brokered model, what's most important? I guess not surprisingly, security, number one top priority for state CIOs for a number of years. But I guess give me your perspective on some of those other responses on CRM and some of the areas that we know state CIO organizations sometimes struggle with.
Yeah, we took a very pure ITIL model. We have everything that ITIL suggests, all the way down to a BSM, so a business service manager, and we've put a business service manager in all the major agencies, and then the smaller agencies, we take care of them internally. But they are an OCIO employee. They are paid by us. They are partially paid by the agency because we want them to have some skin in the game. They get daily reports on service levels from us, the automated reporting. They're responsible for making sure that the services we deliver to the agency they're assigned to meet their expectations. And my only rule to them is, if I hear about a problem from the director of the agency, you failed, because your job is to make sure that we maintain the level of service that that the agency requires. And we give them the tools, and that's the big thing. Every day, every morning, they see every single incident report, every single service request, an age ticket report. They know every change we're doing, so they're responsible for change management within their agency, so we don't step on each other. And they're responsible to make sure that not only is the change management, we distribute all that, communicate really well, but they are supposed to have that one-on-one conversation to explain what is that change that we're doing. So the business service manager model is working very, very well for us, and it's strictly right along the lines of what ITIL suggests.
Yeah, in Vermont, we call them IT leads.
Okay.
Before we consolidated, they were essentially the CIOs of those separate agencies.
But now they work for you.
They work for me now. So
is that a good thing or a bad thing, John? I mean, they don't like that probably.
they've evolved.
Okay, good.
They've fallen in line. No,
I like that.
they're great because they know the business of that agency. So they're a vital role to me in making sure that we're meeting our commitments and meeting the service level that we need. And they're in the senior leadership meetings out in the agencies. So they're part of those senior teams out in the agencies that's been welcomed by the cabinet secretaries and commissioners to say, we need you. So it's a good partnership for us. One of the cool things that we did this year was we created a performance dashboard that's on our website, so you can go and look to see what our grade is in that agency. So, someone like Human Services, we may be a C+. Someone, in Commerce, we may be an A. So we're able to continually look at that and say, here's where we need to improve, here's what they said, and really drill into making sure that we're inspecting what we're doing to make sure we keep up the service.
And we'll get into all those topics in more depth here in a few minutes. Graham, as we did interviews on these topics, and as you look at this kind of data from a national perspective, what are your thoughts or comments on obviously some of these challenges that the CIOs are going to have in this transformation of their employee set?
Well, I think that, probably no surprise to the people in this room that security is the biggest skill set in demand. Right. But when you look at the other areas that people are really concerned about, it comes down to not managing things, it's managing relationships with people, right? And they can be internal customers, they can be vendors, it can be the public, but that's really the skill set in demand.
So let's transition into a topic which is a complex discussion, but we're trying to distill it down to some key points. This is an area that has entertained a lot of state CIOs for years around IT cost management, who's doing what, chargeback and full recovery, and also how are you doing that. So we asked to just get two quick data points, and I'll kind of start with Graham for the discussion here, because again, this is the first time we've kind of investigated this. We've kind of anecdotally, we know what's going on with the states, but one is around what are you doing in terms of the measurement of IT, what framework, what methodology you're using, and again, we'll talk about that because we see some growth in that area that brings more discipline to what states are doing. And then, of course, we wanted to get actually the breakout of where states are in terms of that. And you can see the predominant states or predominant percentage of states are still in either full cost recovery or some percentage of that. So it's an interesting kind of conundrum in terms of what state CIOs can do. So we'll talk about that. Graham, thoughts on that before we move to Ed and then John?
Yeah, just a couple of things. I think most states are using some variation of a fairly traditional activity-based costing methodology to understand what their costs are, although technology business management as a framework, TBM, is becoming more and more popular. In terms of whether states are required to actually recover all of their costs through the chargeback or their rate model, 4 out of 5 states have to recover some or all of their services through that cost recovery. And so maybe they have some amount of directly appropriated funds, but it's usually not enough to cover all of them. So they're having to package all of those costs into their rates. And there's a bunch of challenges that come with that, which we'll explore a little bit.
Yeah. Ed, you're just kind of, guess quickly, where are you in this spectrum and challenges? We'll talk a little bit about some of those in a minute, but where are you?
Full chargeback state. I have to recover all my costs. I just get spending authority. The only general funds I get is for a commission called the Nebraska IT Commission, which I chair, and it actually sets all security policies, all IT policies for the state. We get general funding just to cover salaries and things of that sort. Meetings.
You have a lavish travel and entertainment budget, right?
Oh, no, not like NASCIO, Doug. It's sandwiches.
Some corporate sponsorship for that commission.
Exactly. I could do that. That would be good. So, that's it. And, we have full transparency to how we identify our rates. We do open houses. Very often, anytime we bring in a new service, we make sure we do an open house so people understand where did the money come from, why are we charging what we're charging. Mm-hmm. And obviously, every 2 years, our biennium budget, we do months of open houses to explain to each agency what they're being charged. We just came through a budget cycle. I got no phone calls. No one said anything because we proactively make sure they understand how we determine that rate. And one of the things that we do is we try to incent good behavior. And what I mean by that is we charge for consumption. So if someone's scanning a database every 10 seconds, I'm going to charge them for it. And it's really quick way when they get their bill that they say, how can I do something about this? Well, we can go in there and rewrite your app. So there's one instance where we literally spent 15 minutes on the rewrite and we saved them over $50,000 because it was poorly written by not us, a vendor. But anyway.
Good utility model.
Yeah, and so, we try to incent the right behavior. And so every time we put out a rate, we think of what behavior do we want them to have, and that is maintain their applications. And so if they let that go, then it's going to be a little less effective in, as far as cost.
Mm-hmm. So John, where do you fall in terms of your business model?
So we're about 99% cost recovery. 1/3 of 1% of that is general fund, and then we have a couple special funds that go with our GIS group. But really, we have to charge back for everything we do. And it's a point of contention with the agencies. And, it's a constant back and forth about, what they need, what they think they should pay for, what's allocated across the head count, and, what's billed on a demand basis. So we have a couple different ways of billing back, but two primary ways. And one is just spread across the head count for things like network, things like desktop support. And then on the demand side, the other side of the billing, it's, if we can attach a license to someone, then we bill them back on a demand basis. And that gives them the ability to determine whether or not that license is really needed for that individual. So we built some Power BI dashboards for each agency, and this was the first year that we've done this. I went and personally met with each one of the agencies. We bring up the SLA, we bring up their bill, and we're able to show them through our Power BI tools, each user, what license are associated with it and how much it costs them per user. So you'll see,
Granular, yeah.
Very granular. It was during one of our meetings, someone said, that person's been dead for 2 years. I've been paying for that, $1,500 a year for that person, and they're not even here. How could you allow this to happen? So we're providing more transparency, more granularity into the bills, and I think that's, the feedback that I'm getting from the cabinet secretaries is, we're extremely happy that you're meeting with us. It shows your commitment, and we're excited that you're showing us the knobs that we can turn to bring down our bills.
Very good. So kind of a little deeper in this topic, I really wanted to ask this question this year simply because of my experience in state government. I have a little PTSD about this because I was overhead. My portfolio was enterprise architecture, IT strategic planning, policy, CRM. I was the overhead king. So everything we did was essentially embedded in a full cost recovery model, but I know that I wasn't sending bills to any customers. So I had a high degree of sensitivity, and I often had my self-esteem hurt by that comment about, you're just overhead, Doug, so you don't have any standing at these meetings. But you can see we have a wide kind of a portfolio of things that are funded by the overhead rate. And then again, if you look at that, states are going more and at least trying to sanitize the rates and moving more towards to the general fund revenue. So I'm going to get some comments from our two CIOs pretty quickly, but back to you, Graham, in terms of your thoughts on the range of these things.
I'll just highlight one of
Yeah.
these. I think that the largest one in terms of the percentage-wise is cybersecurity. And that's the one, we've seen a big drive over the last couple of years, more or less successful in different states, to try and get dedicated funding for cybersecurity. People just see the urgency of it and the need, and it's been something that they've been pressing for.
Any thoughts on here? Ed, have you already covered this because you're in the other. We saw that in a number of instances where that 33% was things like we support the IT commission, we support the telehealth board, we support all these things, and that's generally what they get general fund or special fund dollars for. And yours is an extremely small percent as well, too.
Very, very small. And what we do is, for training, we charge per account for the training. For our SIM and things like that we have to maintain, we actually put that as a percentage, and we call it out on the bill of every VM, every server, you pay a small security fee for all that. Even your workstation, you pay a small security fee for your workstation. And we own all the workstations across the state, so everything comes from our office. And so it looks small, and they see it, and they see security, and it's to them that is not a really large bill. But then when I start adding up how many devices we have across the state, it funds us pretty well.
Yeah.
So it looks like I have a small budget, but I get a pretty good one.
Yeah. So let's go to one more element of this, and that is for those that many of you in here are still at, as you know, 46% still at that full cost recovery model. We're looking how do they break that down? In some cases, this can be very granular. Most states have a service catalog, and they can get very detailed. And they've begun to kind of be more transparent, as you heard both our state CIOs say. So I guess, John, as this is how you're constructing it at the customer agency level, as just part of the IT service spectrum, how are you doing that today?
Yep. So we're doing it at the department or agency level.
Agency level.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, because you have it all, so right. So they know what you're getting from you, right? You have a utility model, they know exactly what they're getting.
We do. We provide a lot of granularity, and you know, as I said, with the BI tools, it really gives them a different way of looking at it, and you know, there's a lot of value in them understanding what they're paying for and what they're being charged for and why. And, you know, I think we brought up security and whether or not, you know, that's appropriate to build back, and our state legislature has been in the model of just spreading across the head count, just build it into the rate, and just do what you need to do. So, you know, they've been very supportive, but at the same time, we have what, you know, I refer to as the frozen middle in state government, the people that never leave, right? and they're not as receptive to being billed back for those type of things. They'd rather just have it in a general fund somewhere. Just don't bother us within our agency budgets for that type of stuff. But from a CIO or enterprise perspective, we want to draw down as many federal funds as possible. So spreading it across the headcount and letting each agency decide how they're going to pay for it has been the best route for us so
Yeah,
far.
and again, recognizing you always have challenges with the percent of federal funds, part of CIO budget. So I want to skip ahead because I want to get to kind of the crux of both the survey. You saw the title, the responsive state CIO connecting to the customer. And this is a theme we saw throughout the interviews, a theme, obviously we started to develop the analysis to all of the data. We asked a significant large number of questions around customer relationship management to agencies, clearly extending that all the way to citizens as the ultimate customer. So somewhat surprised at the percent here, so I'm going to let Graham give the kind of the national view and what we heard from all the interviews as well.
Yeah, I mean, we thought it was interesting that 75% of states already have some kind of CRM-related office in place, and for those that don't, half of them are planning to put it together, and I think that probably wasn't the case 5 years ago. And I think it's somewhat tied to this evolution in business models and the need to become increasingly more customer-centric, and so that was sort of an interesting finding.
Yeah. So Ed, you talked about your model, so you're in that 75%, and
Absolutely, the BSMs, and you know, that gives me daily feedback, but then we do surveys, and I publish those surveys nationally. Actually, you can read them. Every January I do a blog on how we deal with our survey. This year I'll give you a preview, 4.7 out of 5. And we contact each and every individual that gives us anything less than a 4 across the board. And our team calls them, says, what can we do better? And so I think we started, first survey is 4.5, then 4.6, 4.7, so we're going up. I think we're kind of maxing out, but I think they appreciate that feedback, that we call them, we take the time to call them and ask what we could have done better. Good. And that that wins us a lot of credibility when we actually follow up.
Yeah, John, your approach?
So,
Talk about your IT leads.
We have the IT leads across the different agencies as part of the senior leadership teams in those agencies. We also do a partner advisory panel or a committee where they can give direct feedback. My deputy secretary runs that, and so we're in a continual improvement loop there to make sure that, you know, we're constantly hearing from the agencies. It's been challenging for us being fairly immature in our growth as an organization, starting out just in 2017 and taking their IT people. So our grades probably aren't as good, but like I said, we post those online because we're trying to improve those grades all the time. But it's been a challenge for us with some of the relationships. So I feel, you know, in Vermont, we have several different levels. We have the IT leader level, we have the deputy running a partner advisory board. Our governor believes strongly in teams, so our executive cabinet meets every week, no exception. So every week, our agency secretaries and the governor are together talking about the problems that we have in the different agencies and trying to solve each other's problems.
On the business side.
On the business side, yes.
Do you have a chief customer officer?
We do not.
Chief customer officer?
Me.
And
You?
so, yeah.
That's where he gets those 4.7s.
Well, and so what I would say about this, and I have a problem with the title of this, because I truly believe they have to be partners, not customers, right? And
But you're sending them a bill.
I am. I know it's a tricky situation, right? But I'm not. There's situations where I can't give them what they want, right? You know, I want this, and I have to tell them no. And if it was a true customer model, we wouldn't be doing that. It would be, you know, we'd be the vendor saying, "Here you go, we'll be here to support you later and bill you," you know, and that's, you know.
Was that a shot at these people?
No, not at all, not at all. You know, we have to take the approach that we're in this with them, and that we need good enterprise solutions across the board, and that we're true partners.
Well, thank you. As you can see, we asked about kind of a range of strategies, so I'll ask Graham to comment on his thoughts in terms of highlight some things we talked about.
Yeah, I mean, there's a people piece to this, and there's a process and tools piece. And I think the sort of top responses reflected that. We've already mentioned, I think there's but 2/3 of the states have dedicated contacts at each agency level. We've talked a little bit about examples. And then I think Ed brought up the point about IT service management processes and tools, and that's pretty common. We've got more than half of the states are deploying those kind of formal processes so that they can manage that interaction on a more professional basis.
Yeah. So we're going to look at actually something Ed's already brought up, and that is if you measure the satisfaction, what do you do for this with this information? He's already said he drills down to that. He goes visits. So I guess I'm going to go back to you, Ed, to say when you look at kind of what the range of satisfaction dimensions that are presented here, obviously doing feedback, 89%. That's clearly you're targeting that already. Thoughts on any of these other items that you want to highlight from Nebraska in terms of what you're doing?
Yeah, you know, the services is a big one. You know, what can we do for you? What services are you wanting? That's big, and that influences a lot of the things we do. And it also, you know, when we're told, you know, this took too long for our service request or something, we look at that for automation. We've automated account setup for that very reason. Well, one is I didn't have enough service desk folks to do all this. But you send in a ticket now and you get everything. You get your user ID, you get your email, you get your shared drive, you get everything in 5 minutes. And we're working on the other end of tearing that down, working with HR, because we're having them just an easy button and they can tear the account down. So that was a big feedback for us. They said, you know, it just took too long to get, you know, the PC and everything. And so we ended up automating the entire process so it happens. So they have control of it. They send in a ticket, they get everything they need in 5 minutes. And so those are the things that, you know, the feedback. The portal isn't as good as they want it. And so, you know, we ask them, okay, so what can we do better, and things of that sort. Also, one of the big things that going back to your customer is there's a misconception, like one person didn't like the phone case that they got. Well, we don't buy those for them. So, you know, so you also have a chance to say, you know, we don't order those, your boss did. But so it works to our benefit, because then we kind of set expectations.
Okay. Yeah. John, do you use any of the information to integrate into the performance evaluations for your team? Those IT leads, you use that feedback? Use that?
Oh, I absolutely do.
Absolutely do?
Absolutely do.
Each of our teams has a goal that they must meet.
Yeah.
We have SMART goals, so it's 100%. They have to show how they're going to improve if they haven't.
Well, and for us being a new agency, we're looking at the organizational structure. Does this structure make sense? You know, we took an approach when we created the agency to make sure that everyone was left embedded in the agencies, sitting where they sit, making sure that we stayed close to the business. As we've evolved as an agency, as we've grown up, we're seeing areas where if we restructure, we can provide the service a little better. So we're constantly looking at that as we receive feedback, changing roles and responsibilities, really trying to look at our processes and find out, you know, or figure out if those are the, you know, if we could lean the process a little bit, make it easier for our partners, and you know, truly try to drill down into what's going on.
Yeah.
And we took an opposite approach. We pulled them out as quickly as we possibly could. We wanted them to take on our culture as quickly as possible. And to look at an enterprise view, when you're at an agency, you kind of are very tunnel vision.
Right.
Especially our network folks, they came over and they said, this is a totally different way of looking at it. And they finally understood why we did some of the things we did, because it wasn't an agency we were looking at the enterprise.
Right.
And so we pulled them out of their environment as quickly as we possibly could.
Inoculated them?
Exactly, yeah.
Well, what we heard from the employees.
You have the same face, same place model, which a lot of states do as well. You leave them there. So you're okay with that? That's working for you?
It's been a challenge for us as an agency, because they still identify as maybe the Department of Health or Natural Resources, but those are the missions that they care about, and that's why they work there, right? That's why they want to support that mission. So we were very sensitive to that when we decided, do we pull them out? Do we leave them? We didn't want people to, revolt and quit. We had, I'm going to pick on my deputy secretary for a minute. He was 29 years in transportation. When I met with him and told him that we were taking over, hostile takeover, right? He said, I'm going to retire. I quit. And it was about 3 weeks after we met where he called and he's like, okay, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. And from that point on, he was, committed to making sure our agency was successful. And, it turned out to be a good thing for him now being a deputy secretary of the agency. But, we certainly struggle with people identifying as the Agency of Digital Services.
Right.
Quite often, I see in the weekly reports, Agency of Human Services, IT did this, and
I think
it's a cultural thing.
maybe we're going to turn this into Family Feud, but when we brought them in, I had transportation, and now transportation is talking to DHHS, and now DHHS is talking to the Crime Commission, and so all these people, if I left them, my knowledge transfer wouldn't be there. So now I have people in the central office, they can support corrections as good as anybody that was at corrections, because they're all together and they're doing that knowledge transfer. And then they're also saying, for the first time, like I said earlier, for the first time I understand why you're making the decisions you're making. And then they won't go back, because of course they're going to have the same friends, and they're going to go back and say, guess what? And this is the way we need to do it because of X, Y, and Z. And in fact, they have actually enhanced our relationship, because now it's not the big bad OCIO. They became us, and the very first thing they wanted to do was they wanted T-shirts so that they could identify themselves as us, and so they really wanted to do that. And then in the case of, I don't want to do it your way because I'm just going to retire, I wanted, I promised a 20% attrition rate, so I just said, great. Go for it. You're not the one I want anyway. I got a 20% goal. You're going to help me. And we ended up passing that. And then as we got more efficient, I think we could go down a little bit more. We actually, it was one of those things where if you don't want to be here, that's great. That's fine. You can go.
Machiavellian CIO model, I like it.
Sorry about that.
Change is hard.
Exactly.
So new topic was CRM. Another new topic was performance management. We're looking at it again from the enterprise perspective, and you'll see a lot more data in the survey around CRM, which you'll enjoy reading. So I want to kind of touch on a new topic which we brought into play, which we heard from our CIOs was becoming more and more important. So we've seen the growth in performance management at the enterprise level driven by the governor. We've seen the adoption appointment of a number of states now that have chief operating officers. We're going to see that grow. So I'll turn it over to Graham for some perspectives on this topic, because he really worked on a lot of this section too.
Yeah, so we wanted to know if states have an enterprise-wide performance management program, who's driving it, and what is the role, if any, of the state CIO in that program. And as you might expect, for most states, it's the governor or the governor's office that's driving the strategy, although in some cases the state CIO actually is in a driving role. Where they have a role, and this is what the next slide touches on, it's really more around supporting governance. Although there are a number of CIOs who are acting effectively as the data infrastructure provider for the entire performance management program, which seems to be a good opportunity for the CIO to play a critical role, but it's not one that many CIOs are taking on currently.
Yeah. So I guess as you all look at this, I'll start with John. You have a overarching performance management. You do internally. Does the governor have one? Does the governor have a dashboard?
He does. It was one of his first executive orders.
And they have 2-year terms, so it has to be a quick dashboard.
It was a quick dashboard, and he appointed a chief performance officer that works for the Secretary of Administration. That chief performance officer works very closely with our chief data officer, and we've been building the program of continuous improvement and aligning the governor's strategic goals to the agency's strategic goals, to the department's strategic goals, and measuring off from there. But one of the highlights is the continuous improvement training that we've been doing. We've sent over 1,000 employees to be trained in white belt, yellow belt, green belt, and it's proving to be successful. Even in our own program, we're having a lean event around procurement to help with that. And we've seen the value, and I think the agencies, starting from the bottom up, those employees with the great ideas being empowered to take some initiative and put those forward.
How are you involved in that?
Well, I'm not directly. We have our own agency goals, and we're continually monitoring and making sure that they align with the governor's goals, and looking at the statewide dashboard to make sure that we as the executive branch IT department are supporting all the things that we need to support to get to where he wants us to get to.
Ed, you've got a business governor, been a lot of business disciplines into the state of Nebraska.
Absolutely.
Performance management is a big part of that, I know.
Yeah, and it's very familiar to me. He clearly brought in a private sector view. Everything has to be smart, actionable. You have to measure it. If I have a goal that doesn't say 80% by this date, it's gone. I mean, he's gonna rewrite that goal. He posts his goals, and then he expects us to come in and say, how are you going to make me successful at my goals? Then he looks at my goals, and then he says, Ed, you're sandbagging. This is changing, and this is changing. And he gets metrics every month that he goes over and tells us, and he's very, he wants us to have stretch goals. If the worst thing I could do is to come in and say I met all my goals, I know I'm going to be in trouble. I purposely have to miss
He doesn't think you're all in green, right?
No. He wants me to miss a few. Yeah. And then what we do is we take then my goals that support the governor's goals, and my directs have to take my goals to see how they're going to make me successful. Then they push down to their management team those same goals. So the entire organization, like the 20% goal, everybody knew that was it. That was our goal. We had to get there. Cost savings, I had to say X number of dollars, and every month he checks to see how we did. So it's governor's goals translate to my goals translate to my direct's goals translate to the manager's goals, and the manager's goals directly go to the people who are actually doing all the work.
Down to the tactical level. Yeah,
Yep.
Good. So we also asked a final question around performance management, around what it included, and we gave the CIOs a long list, a pick list of options. So we're presenting here what are the top five choices. So I'll turn it over to Graham for some color commentary.
Yeah, and I think what was interesting here is, as you might expect, a major element of the performance management program was establishing metrics that are tied to the governor's goals or monitoring program effectiveness and things like that. Probably the most interesting data point here, though, is one of the most significant responses was part of the objective of the program was establishing a performance management culture within the organization. So it's much about changing people's mindset and behavior as it is about collecting data. And I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, and so I think, again, we're going to see this, I expect this to continue to evolve and mature. We see new governors coming on that bring this to bear. They also, again, are hiring chief operating officers. We've got chief data officers involved. Lots of chiefs today in state government, and so they're bringing, I think, some of these disciplines. So let's move to our final topic of this morning, and one which we've looked at before, but one has become certainly exceedingly more important, certainly in the last couple of years, and that's all around state and local collaboration. You can see the long dimensions of things. So we looked at this, I believe, about 3 years ago, and so we thought we'd go ahead and replicate that, and we've obviously seen some changes. So let me turn it back over to Graham for some insights in the national view.
Yeah, and we ask a question related to this about every 3 years. And in some senses, the responses this year are pretty consistent in that where there is collaboration in services, it's mostly on the infrastructure side versus the application side. There is some ERP and mobile and sharing such as that, but a lot of it is around more the infrastructure side. But what has gone down in the last 3 years is the percentage of states that are collaborating around data center hosting and co-location, which maybe is tied more to the downsizing of state data center infrastructure more generally. But what's gone up are other types of infrastructure services like storage, networking, and then security and infrastructure is a big increase. So that's an area that I think there's a lot more collaboration going on.
Yeah, so Ed, you've been doing a lot with local governments. They're big customers of yours.
We hit every box, everything across there. I know the audience, hopefully they can see that we hit every single box. I mean, we cooperate with people you wouldn't think of, the Nebraska Public Power District, and we're partners. We're partners with the University of Nebraska. We provide services for their entire network. We provide fiber to all 244 school districts across Nebraska have fiber, and we manage that program. We actually even, we submit their E-rate so that it's accurate, and the governor has allowed me to have staff to actually do that. So we touch school districts, we touch all the universities with our services, we touch private and public schools, power districts, counties, and
Wide, all the constellation of political subdivisions. You got 'em.
absolutely. I mean, it's the private sector coming out in me. I want as many customers as I can.
Hostile takeover. Ed,
Absolutely.
Yeah. John, I was just visiting with you, I guess, back in August, and there was some questions on there about what could you do on the cybersecurity front. You see that was the #1 topic.
Right.
What are you providing for local governments? Do you plan to expand that portfolio?
I do plan on expanding it. Right now, we don't do enough. We offer very little service to the local level, unfortunately. Security is one of those areas that the governor, the legislature, we all agree that we need to help them. We need to provide security awareness training. We need to open our contracts to let them leverage our pricing. And that's one area that we definitely need to move towards. And I think this year, in the legislative season, we'll see some of that. Network services, we do provide network services to some schools and municipalities on the public safety side of things. And then GIS services is probably our biggest asset that we offer to municipalities. We have
Pretty common, right?
Yeah, we have a very good GIS group that provides a lot of data sets to the municipalities that they use from everything from parcel mapping to water sewer issues.
Yep.
Yeah, dangerous to predict the future, but again, I think with the constraining resources, fiscal and people resources at the local governments, we expect this to expand. We expect to see more around digital government services, state governments offering portal services. That does to local governments, identity and access management. Again, we fully expect this portfolio of what state CIOs are providing to expand, and certainly that's going to continue. I think final point of data is this is one that didn't surprise really me at all, which is you can see the acquisition. Do you provide that for local governments? So your acquisition are open as master price contracts to your local governments.
Absolutely, they buy off them all the time.
Yeah, so I think the challenge is right here is you see 69%. So state government CIOs particularly, they're not good at marketing what they're doing to the local governments. And you may be doing more than that.
I do. I speak at every summit I can in the state, and we talk about, and the topic is always the same. It's the state as a cloud, and we, after those events, we usually pick up a lot of customers. So I guess I'm in the wrong. I should be on the other side of this. I should be in sales.
That's very good. So we're going to, again, I see that understanding coming full circle. As state CIOs get more into that broker model, that's going to be one of their opportunities, is to figure out how they can market more directly to their local jurisdictions. Okay, so that's our story. We're sticking to it. End of Family Feud Part 2. We do have hard copies of the reports available today outside. Digital copies are available on NASCIO, Grant Thornton, and CompTIA. Always are open and complimentary to everybody. You can download as many copies as you want, and please redistribute those. You'll see a lot more data on the other topics that are available to you, and we'll be out on the road show here starting pretty soon, bringing this message to a wide audience. So again, please join me in thanking our 3 expert panelists today. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. President, back to you.
Reading it.
Thank you. So we're blinded by the light.
I want to personally say thanks to our panel. Again, great session, great insights. They've only scratched the surface of what's in this this great top 10 study. Also appreciate the partnerships as well. So as Doug said, there are copies of the 2019 State CIO Survey waiting for you outside of the room. In preparation for our afternoon general session, there is a poll question in the app that we would like you to take. The results will help frame the conversation of the role of state CIOs playing driver of information. That question is labeled as State CIO Role in Innovation. Please take a moment to enter your response before the start of the session at 3:30. We will now have a half-hour networking break. The hotel staff will be setting up this room, so we need you to get out. And because the sooner you do that, the sooner we can get to lunch. Remember to visit the Give Back partner, and we'll see you all later this afternoon.